The wind howled across the Wyoming plains, kicking up dust that stung her face like 1,000 tiny needles. Ellie Harper stood alone at the edge of the shooting range, her father's old, battered rifle slung across her shoulder, its stock cracked and its barrel rusted from years of neglect. She was 19, small for her age, with a braid of chestnut hair swinging defiantly in the breeze. The crowd of local sharpshooters, all men, leaned against the fence, their laughter cutting through the air sharper than the wind. They didn't just mock her, they mocked their rifle, her father's memory, and the audacity of a girl daring to step into their world. "Go home, Ellie," one of them sneered, his voice thick with condescension. That piece of junk couldn't hit a barn door. She didn't flinch, didn't respond, but her eyes burned with something fierce, something unstoppable. This is the story of how Ellie Harper turned their laughter into silence, and if you're new here, hit that subscribe button to join us on this wild ride. You won't believe what happens next. Ellie's boots crunched against the gravel as she walked toward the shooting line, the weight of the rifle heavier than its rusted metal. It wasn't just a gun, it was the last piece of her father, Tom Harper, a man who'd taught her to shoot when she was barely tall enough to hold it. Tom had been a legend in Cody, Wyoming, a sharpshooter who could thread a bullet through a battle cap at 200 yards. But that was before the accident, before the fire that took him and left Ellie with nothing but memories and a broken rifle. The townsfolk remembered Tom, but they didn't see him in her. To them, she was just a skinny kid with a chip on her shoulder, trying to live up to a name too big for her. The annual Cody Sharpshooting Showdown was their stage, not her sawdusty arena where men like Buck Thompson, the reigning champion, strutted like roosters. Buck, with his polished Stetson and custom Winchester, had already dismissed her with a smirk. "This ain't a game for little girls," he'd said earlier, loud enough for everyone to hear. Ellie ignored him, her fingers tracing the familiar grooves of the rifle's stock, her heart pounding like a war drum. The range was set up at the edge of town, a sprawling field framed by the jagged peaks of the Rockies. Targets lined the distance as standard bullseyes at 50, 100, and 200 yards, plus a few clay pigeons for the trick shots that made the crowd cheer. The rules were simple: hit the most targets, win the purse. But this year, there was a twist, a mystery target, a flying surprise the organizers kept secret until the final round. Whispers had already spread that it was something impossible, something even Buck couldn't hit. Ellie didn't care about the purse, though the $5,000 would have kept her and her mom afloat for months. She was here for something else, something deeper. She was here to prove them wrong, and not just the men at the fence, but the voice in her head that whispered she'd never be enough. The first round began with the crack of gunfire, the air filling with the sharp scent of gunpowder. Buck went first, his shots precise, each one pinging the steel targets with a satisfying clang. The crowd roared, clapping him on the back as he tipped his hat. One by one, the other shooters took their turns, some hitting, some missing, but all of them basking in the camaraderie of the range. Ellie was last, her name called like an afterthought. She stepped up, the rifle creaking as she raised it. The crowd's laughter returned, low and mocking, as she sighted the 50-yard target. Her hands were steady, but her heart raced. She could still hear her father's voice, "Breathe, Ellie. The bullet knows where to go if you trust it." She squeezed the trigger. The shot was wild, kicking up dirt far left of the target. The laughter erupted, louder now, and Buck's voice cut through, "Told ya, kid, stick to baking pies." Ellie's jaw tightened, but she didn't look back. She adjusted her stance, her fingers brushing the rifle's cracked stock, and fired again. This time, the bullet hit the edge of the target, a glancing blow but a hit nonetheless. The laughter faltered, just for a moment. Round after round, Ellie's shots improved. She wasn't perfect, her father's rifle was too old, too worn to be precise, but she was consistent, methodical, like she was building something no one else could see. By the third round, she'd hit enough targets to stay in the game, trailing Buck by only a few points. The crowd wasn't laughing anymore. They were watching, some with curiosity, others with unease. Buck noticed it too, his smirk fading as he glanced at her. "Beginner's luck," he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. Ellie didn't care what he thought. She was in her own world now, the rifle an extension of her will. each shot a step closer to silencing the doubts that had haunted her since her father's death. She could feel him with her, his steady hands guiding hers, his quiet confidence filling the spaces where fear tried to creep in. The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows across the range. When the final round was announced, the mystery target, the crowd buzzed with anticipation as the organizers unveiled Ida, a drone, no bigger than a dinner plate, rigged to fly in erratic patterns at 300 yards. It was a shot no one in Cody had ever attempted, a gimmick designed to humiliate even the best. Buck's face paled, but he recovered quickly, flashing a grin to the crowd. "Let's see what this toy can do," he said, loading his Winchester. The drone took off, zipping through the air like a panicked bird, its path unpredictable. Buck fired, his shots clean but wide, missing by inches. He cursed under his breath, reloading as the crowd groaned. One by one, the other shooters tried and failed, their bullets slicing through empty air. The drone seemed untouchable, a taunting speck against the twilight sky. Ellie was last again. She stepped to the line, the rifle heavier than ever, its cracks and rust a mirror of her own scars. The crowd was silent now, their earlier mockery replaced by something else, a curiosity, maybe even respect. She could feel their eyes on her, but she didn't look at them. She looked at the drone, its erratic dance a challenge that felt personal. She thought of her father, of the nights they'd spent under those same stars, practicing shots no one else believed in. She thought of the fire, the way it had taken everything but this rifle. She thought of the laughter, the sneers, the weight of being underestimated. Her breath steadied. The world slowed. She raised the rifle, her eyes locking onto the drone's impossible path. The first shot missed, the bullet vanishing into the dusk. The crowd murmured, disappointment rippling through them. Buck snorted, his confidence returning. "Told ya," he said, loud enough for her to hear. Ellie didn't flinch. She adjusted, her fingers steady on the trigger, her heart a metronome. She fired again. The drone jerked, a tiny spark flashing as the bullet grazed its edge. The crowd gasped, but it wasn't enough. The drone kept flying. Ellie had one shot left. She could feel the weight of every eye, every doubt, every moment of grief that had brought her here. She closed her eyes for a split second, her father's voice clear as day. "Trust the bullet, Ellie." She opened her eyes, tracked the drone's wild arc, and squeezed the trigger. The crack of the shot echoed across the plains. For a moment, time stopped. Then the drone exploded in a shower of sparks, plummeting to the ground in a smoking heap. The crowd erupted, a roar of disbelief and awe. Ellie lowered the rifle, her hands trembling, her chest tight with something between triumph and tears. Buck's face was a mask of shock, his hat suddenly looking too big for him. The organizers scrambled to confirm the hit, but the crowd didn't need proof. They were on their feet, cheering for the girl they'd laughed at, the girl with the broken rifle. Ellie didn't smile. She didn't wave. She slung the rifle over her shoulder and walked off the range, her braid swinging, her boots steady on the gravel. The purse was hers, but that wasn't what mattered. She'd done Ida for her father, for herself, for every moment she'd been told she wasn't enough. As she disappeared into the twilight, the crowd still cheering, she felt something shift inside her. The weight was gone. She was enough. The stars were out now, bright against the Wyoming sky, and as the crowd dispersed, the story of Ellie Harper was already spreading. The girl who'd walked into their world with a broken rifle and left with a legend. If this story moved you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And let us know in the comments where are you watching from? From which part of the country are you watching this video?